Welcome to another episode of The Latest to Admire. Today, I am very excited to have a conversation with comedian Lucas Zelnick. Lucas has performed at the New York Comedy Festival, Netflix is a Joke, SF Sketchfest, Moon Tower Comedy Festival, and more. Thank you so much for being on my show. I'm so excited to be talking with you.
Thanks for having me on your show. I'm excited to be talking with you too.
So I first discovered you on TikTok, and I am now like I just scroll through all your videos. That's really the only thing I do on TikTok, and they always just make me laugh. So
I'm flattered. I appreciate it. That's the goal. They make some people angry, so I'm glad that they make you laugh.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so who has had the biggest impact on the person you've become?
Wow, getting right into it with the hard-hitting question. Gosh, I would say probably my family, like the culture in my family, my parents, my siblings. Uh, yeah, I think we've always just had like a family culture of talking a lot. So when it came time to find a job, I knew that I only really had one discernible skill, which was running my mouth. And then I started to look into ways to make money from that, and it turns out it's not very easy. And then finally I found stand-up comedy, but I think like my family is a big culture of debate and honesty and open conversation.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So is there someone who, without fail, always makes you laugh?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, probably a few people. My sister makes me laugh a lot. One of my best friends is a comedian. He's actually opening for me tonight in Denver, named Jamie Wolf. He makes me laugh. Those are probably two good examples.
Cool. I love that. Um, is there someone who inspired you to pursue comedy?
To be honest, mostly I pursued comedy from a place of like delusion, maybe. Um, I didn't. I mean, I always enjoyed stand-up comedy, watching it. There's a lot of comics I look up to now, John Mulaney at the highest levels, but also like younger folks like Jordan Jensen or Jeffrey Osmus or people I look up to. But I started doing comedy just because I didn't want to work an office job and I wanted something that reflected who I was. And humor was always how I connected with people. So I didn't do it because I looked up to stand-up comedians. But now that I am a stand-up comedian, there's plenty of people I look up to sort of get better at it.
Cool. That's really cool. Um, so what motivates you even on days you aren't really feeling it?
Fear, the belief that I'll lose everything, the sinking feeling that there's nothing to gain and only things to lose. No, I mean, I feel like it's what motivates me. I don't know. I'm motivated because I typically feel like I'm bringing joy to people. And, um, I think the other thing is like when you're a comedian or when you have any kind of non-traditional job that doesn't have an office and doesn't have a boss, it's very quickly like nothing gets done if you don't do anything. So if I sleep all day, like nothing happens. And so I guess the fact that like I guess I'm the reason why I would succeed and also the reason that I would fail. That like makes me very motivated to work for myself. Whereas I used to have corporate jobs and stuff, and when I did those things, I felt like I was always doing something for someone else, and now everything that I do is sort of in service of myself, which has turned me into like a completely self-absorbed narcissist, but also keeps me motivated to push forward.
Um, yeah, so I am pop culture obsessed, and I go in stages of shows that I cannot stop watching. Is there a show that you are currently obsessed with?
Ooh, currently obsessed with. I've been watching a lot of movies lately. Like I like psychological thrillers. Um for TV shows, gosh, I'm trying to think of like the last TV show I got really into. I'm excited for Severance to come back. Did you
Yeah,
watch Severance?
I started. I
Oh, you
haven't.
didn't, you weren't a fan.
I like everybody in it, but I just couldn't get into it.
Okay.
My mom really likes the show.
Okay,
So,
cool.
yeah.
I'm trying to think. I watched Nobody Wants This on Netflix, which I know
Yeah.
was all the rage. I found it like a little cheesy, kind of. I mean, I'm Jewish and I have a Christian girlfriend, so it was sort of like directed at me. And I told my Christian girlfriend that I don't think that's what Jews are like when we're dating Christians. And she was like, that's exactly how your family acts towards me. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. So maybe I didn't like it because it felt too directed towards me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I love that show. And watching it, I was like, well, we're not all like that. Not
Yeah.
everybody is exactly
I
like
know.
that. But I was like, I could see some people. Yeah. Um, so if you had a warning label, what would yours say?
Ooh, I like that question. Who's the warning label for? Is it like general
Yeah,
consumption?
yeah.
I think my warning is that I think my biggest flaw is that I believe that being honest is, oh, as long as you're honest, it's okay, whatever you say. And it turns out that's not true at all. Because if you're honest and mean, it's still mean. In fact,
Yeah.
it's arguably meaner. So I think my warning label is like I'm honest to a fault, and sometimes that makes me
Yeah.
not seem mean, yeah, mean. Sometimes that makes me mean, but I do it just because I don't have like I'm lacking some sort of thing where I understand how people are going to react. It's ironic because I'm a comedian, I should be able to read people really well, but in fact, I think a lot of times comedians become comedians because we say things we think are non-comedic and people find those things funny. So I think my warning label is I'm too honest and it's good as a performer, but interpersonally it can be jarring and grating.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom has no filter. So
I get
yeah,
that. Nor
yeah.
does mine. That's where I got it from.
Yeah. Yeah, that and my sister and I are now exactly like her, so we have no filter either. So,
You guys are Jewish.
yeah,
Like
we are.
it comes with the territory, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what in your life brings you the most joy?
Ooh. Um, right now I work a lot, but I get a lot of joy from it. Certainly I get a lot of fulfillment from it. I think joy and fulfillment are different because I feel like I really have a purpose and I feel like the purpose that I serve is worth it, but sometimes it's challenging. Joy, I think I get from spending time with friends, spending time with family, spending time with my girlfriend, but also like exploring new places and meeting new people. I think that's probably the coolest part about my job is, I mean, there's a lot of travel, which can make it challenging, but there's also like no day is ever the same. So that's like really nice. And there's certainly like tomorrow, I'm gonna be done with this show and I'm gonna have just like a day to relax and I'm gonna be really happy. I'm gonna go to, I think there's a hot tub in my hotel. That's gonna bring me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Just warm water.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. What is something that people are always surprised to learn about you?
Hmm. I think, well, I think I talk about it a little bit on stage, but my sister has severe special needs, and I'll be like her legal guardian when my parents die. And I think I come off as a very like confident, annoying, entitled, careless person sometimes, which sometimes can be charming. But I think people don't think that I have like an element of seriousness to me. So I think sometimes that is when they learn that uh I have like a very large value for caring for my family, but also I think maybe, especially as a comedian, sometimes people find me more serious in person than they anticipate. Because I think people are like, oh, you're not being funny right now. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm still like a guy sometimes.
Yeah.
It would be crazy if the whole time I was always doing bits, you know?
Yeah.
So that's sometimes that can be jarring for people. I'll talk to them off stage at the meet and greet, and they'll be like, oh, I had kind of a fun time, like joking with me. And I'm just like, that's not funny. I'm like, you better have had a great time, or if you didn't, lie to me because that
Yeah.
hurts my feelings. So I'm sensitive, serious, and yeah, okay, those two.
Um, what song best describes your life right now?
Mm. Oh man. Well, you know what I'm enjoying listening to? It's not a song, but there's a new album by a band called Peach Fit. The album's called Magpie, and it's all like chill indie rock music. And I spend so much time like on planes and like traveling that's like the music that's speaking to me most. Like I would say most of the time I'm just trying to like dissociate so that I can get from like one place to another without feeling the stress of the travel. And then I have to sort of like lock back in. So I'm like an indie rock song, which is like really, really low energy for long periods of time, and then one moment where I have to like burst into a lot of energy, and then I come back to like really low. Yeah.
Like that. Um, so who do you consider to be the gold standard of comedy?
Mm. Um, the two young comics who I think are really doing it at the top level are Jordan Jensen and Jeffrey Osmus, as I said, in my opinion. Very different styles, but in terms of like joke writing, Jeff is like someone I look up to. And in terms of like really being yourself and sort of riffing and going on tangents, Jordan. So those are like they're younger comics. I mean, I think like John Mulaney is really, really good. I like Dan Soder a lot. Um, I like Sam Morril. I mean, there's so many good people right now. It's kind of like a golden age for comedy, so that's
Yeah.
it's cool to see. Um, but yeah, anyone but me.
Um, so is there one of your jokes that you thought would be a hit and didn't quite land as you had hoped?
Um, I have sections, so yeah, like all the time, if I'm writing a joke and it doesn't land as I'd hope, but when the jokes like consistently don't land, it just won't go into my act. Like so on a night like tonight, the 45 minutes of jokes I do are going to be the ones that sort of like for the most part people like. And then within that, I have like two sections which are riskier. One, I talk about let's say current events and um some wars happening internationally. And I'm going to keep it PG for this interview. And then in the other, I talk about my sister, and I think both topics can be controversial the way that I address them. But I don't like to be like unnecessarily controversial. But if I hold a view on something, um, I sort of stand by it and I'll double down on it. But it does bum me out when it offends people, but I know that it does. But I don't say anything to offend people. But typically, if I talk about those two things, and then the other one I talk about is growing up with privilege, and people sometimes don't like the way I talk about that because some people think that's no laughing matter, but I think it's funny.
Yeah. Um, how do you move past it when a joke doesn't land how you had hoped?
Um, Well, it depends on the day. The way I would like to move past it is to sort of just not acknowledge it and push forward because, you know, I'm having an experience of the audience that may like totally not be super resonant with the experience that the audience is having of me. Like I'm in a big room, my instinct when a joke doesn't land the way I'd hoped is to be like, you guys didn't like that. But then there's people that laughed, and then you say that to them, and they're sort of alienated because they're like, I just laughed. Why are you complaining that I didn't laugh when I did? So the goal is, as long as you're doing well enough, just kind of move forward, smile, basically don't be affected by it. But realistically, what I do is I complain and I lash out at the audience. Even though they're supporting my dream, I go, you guys are stupid. That's why you didn't get that. And I'm smart. That's why I told that joke. And you don't know, you don't understand greatness when it's in front of your face. But that's not what you're supposed to do. It's just a lack of maturity and a lack of experience when I do that.
Well, I like that response.
Sometimes it makes people laugh. Like I try to do it in a tongue-in-cheek way, but ultimately I find that it does more harm than it does good when I overly address the audience. I think it's one thing if you're like totally crushing and then something gets like no response, then you like I can be like, wait, what was wrong with that?
Yeah.
Or if I understand that it's a more controversial joke, maybe I won't be like, what was wrong with that one? I'll be like, I get why you didn't like that. But if it's maybe just a slightly softer reaction, like kind of overanalyzing it is typically not the best path I've found.
Yeah. Um, so what is the biggest obstacle you have overcome?
Ooh, I mean, not many, if I'm being honest with you. I've had a pretty easy go of it. I think probably the hardest part of, I would say, anybody's comedy career, is there's sort of like 2 to 3 years in the beginning where no one wants to let you perform anywhere and you want to perform, but you're not good. So they keep sending you to open mics, but then you're at open mics and nobody's listening, so you can't get good because you can't tell what's even funny. And I was sort of lucky to overcome that obstacle by opening my own space to do comedy in early on in my career, with one of my best friends. So we sort of like surmounted that hump that way. But for most people, what you have to do is just like stay at open mics for like way longer than feels appropriate until you're the best person there, and then you start to get shows, and then from there you can start to build out. Um, but I think the hardest obstacle are it's different now because I've like following on the internet, and so even if one person doesn't think I'm funny or think I'm good, I sort of can point to this like support base of people that enjoy what I do. But I think when you're early on, you're sort of doing jokes and you don't know how they're going, and you don't know if your friends are being honest with you. So you like they're like, oh yeah, that was good. And you're like, was it or am I bad? And so I think just the existential question of like, am I good enough at this to do this? And I think a lot of people ask themselves that for a long time. I probably spent a year asking myself whether I was good enough to do it. Until I was like, well, I don't know if I'm good enough to do it, but I know that I'm doing it. And that's like I think, I don't know if anyone ever feels like totally like they're the best they can be, but I think people feel like they feel like, okay, I'm really doing this. So it took me about a year to 2 years of doing it before I was like, okay, I know I can do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what show or movie do you find yourself quoting more often than you'd like?
Hmm. Hmm. A lot of the early Judd Apatow movies, like Forgetting Sarah Marshall and um, Knocked Up and Step Brothers and some of the old Will Ferrell movies. Like that was super bad. I mean, that's not a Will Ferrell movie, but that is a Judd Apatow movie. Talladega Nights. A lot of those movies are like those are the comedies I grew up on. And to the extent that I ever looked up to anyone in comedy before I was a stand-up comedian, that was like that's what I knew comedy to be. like comedic movies. So all those movies are like very core to my upbringing and my sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Yeah, my brain is pretty much just show and movie quotes. That's pretty much all that's in my head, just quoting it whenever I can.
Yeah. I get that. Listen, do you quote me ever? Don't answer that if it's insulting.
Okay.
Oh gosh. Okay. All the silence hurt. Next question, please.
So, do you have a go-to comfort show or movie that you just turn on when you need to just like tune out the world?
During COVID, I watched The Office. Any of those movies I just listed, I would probably watch if it were like on television or something. I'm trying to think of other go-to shows. I like reality television, but I don't follow any of them particularly. But like, oh no, sorry, MasterChef. I love Gordon Ramsay. He's so funny. He's British. No, I mean I know you know that, but I know you know that he's British, but to me it's funny that he's British. Because he's like almost like making fun of British. He's so British, it's like clearly for the American viewer how he acts British. And I enjoy that because my girlfriend's British and she's like normal British. So anyway, I enjoy Gordon Ramsay.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I love inspiring and motivational quotes. And this week, my favorite quotation is by Dane Thomas. And it says, "Not everyone was designed to see the magic in your madness." Is there a quote that has inspired you lately?
Ooh, this is more of like, I don't know if it's motivating necessarily, but this is like a quote I live by. Um, Everything in moderation, including moderation. So like I believe firmly in like really not overdoing it most of the time and then every once in a while letting it loose. Whatever that means for you, whether that's like adventure or spending money on a thing or a trip or an experience or a meal. And but then also living sort of in moderation, not living in extremes, enjoying a boring day. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Um, well, that was my final question for you. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming to my green room for an interview. So sorry we had to do this in the basement of a theater.
It was fun.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just again thank you for taking the time to talk with me, and I just had the best time. So thank
Oh, I'm
you.
so glad. Nice to meet you.
You
Thanks for the
too.
interview.
Yeah.
Thanks for the thoughtful questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's a wrap on today's edition of The Latest with Maya.